What is driving this is a focus on trying to make a profit through trying to contain costs. And that kind of focus gets driven right down to the front lines of firms where those frontline managers are giving a staffing budget. They get so many dollars for how many hundreds of dollars or thousands of dollars their store or their department sells. They get so many hours that they can use depending on how much merchandise they have to, or inventory they have to move. And they're held accountable for that. And at the same time, of course, they're also held accountable for meeting those sales targets. And not having enough hours and having to sell a lot creates very creative processes in terms of ways to keep labor really flexible so that you hire a lot of people who you can schedule for short shifts during times of peak demand, who you can then say, can you stay a couple of hours longer, or don't come in today, so you kind of keep that very flexible. And so if we look at it, it kind of makes sense in terms of how accountability works. I think the key question, though, is how much labor flexibility do employers need? How unpredictable is labor in retail? How unstable is it? And Phil just gave an example of Macy's is able to post a schedule 7 weeks in advance. And you have a lot of good forecasting that goes into that. That's the same thing that we find in our research and that operations researchers find as well, is that it's the variations that we think of in terms of use of labor in retail isn't as great as commonly believed, or at least as I commonly believed before I started doing this kind of research. Just to give you a quick example from a national women's retail apparel chain that we've studied, when we have actual payroll hours that are used for 80 stores, and so this is how many hours are actually used for each minute of 2012. And when you look at the stores, the most extreme weeks, so let's say the week where there's the most labor used, that was last week, which is Good Friday week, and then the week compared to the week where there's the lowest number of hours used, that's about usually like the third week in January after everybody's brought back their ugly sweaters and you've got something new and you've got your credit card statement and you're in shock. Right? And so for the majority of stores, for like 70 or 80% of these stores that we've studied, that difference is less than 30%. And for the majority, it's less than 20%. So that means that 80% of the number of hours used week in, week out is the same. And when we look week to week, it's over 90% the same from week to week. And those forecasts that managers got at the beginning of their month in terms of how many hours they were likely to need each week were over 90% accurate. If they had just gone with those hours that they've gotten and staffed their staff that way, they would have been over 90% accurate without all the schedule adjustments, as they call them, that were made all the time. And so, and software vendors will brag about this. They'll say, hey, I can predict demand, not a month in advance, 16 weeks, 6 months in advance with over 90% accuracy. So it seems to me, there's just a lot more stability and predictability that's already in retail, that we can find new ways to pass that on to workers in a way that is better for the managers and also better for workers.